For centuries, the Vikings terrorized coastlines, conquered kingdoms, and carved their names into the pages of history with axes and sheer audacity. They were warriors, explorers, and storytellers, and Hollywood has been trying to do them justice ever since. But which Viking films actually deliver the thunder? And which ones are just horned helmets and hollow drama? Stick around, because today, we are settling that debate once and for all. Hi, my name is Max, and this is Top Movies. 20th place, Outlander, 2008. At 20th place is a film that answers a question nobody asked, but absolutely everyone needed answered. What if a spaceman crashed into Viking Age Norway and had to help a village fight a giant alien monster? That question is Outlander, directed by Howard McCain, and released in 2008. Jim Caviezel plays Kanan, a soldier from another world whose spacecraft goes down in what is now Scandinavia around 709 AD. The crash brings with it a terrifying creature called the Morwen, and Kanan is forced to team up with a clan of Norse warriors to destroy it before it destroys them. Now, this film is completely ridiculous in the best possible way. It knows exactly what it is, a creature feature wrapped in a Viking war movie, and it leans into that with tremendous confidence. The production design is genuinely impressive, the battle sequences are brutal and visceral, and the film earns its place on this list by committing fully to its insane premise. If you have never seen it, clear a Friday night. You will not regret it. 19th place, Erik the Viking, 1989. At 19th place, we have a film that takes an entirely different approach to the source material. Erik the Viking, directed by Monty Python alumni Terry Jones and released in 1989, is a comedic fantasy adventure that follows a gentle Viking named Erik, played by Tim Robbins, who is tired of all the pillaging and violence that defines his people's way of life. Determined to journey to the land of the gods and bring an end to the age of Ragnarok, Erik assembles a wonderfully dysfunctional crew and sets sail on an adventure that is part mythology, part satire, and entirely charming. Terry Jones, who also wrote the script, was drawing on his own children's book of the same name, and the film has that kind of warm, irreverent humor that only someone who helped create Monty Python could pull off. The cast is stacked with talent, including John Cleese, Mickey Rooney, and Eartha Kitt, and while it never takes itself too seriously, it has a genuine heart beating underneath all the comedy. It is funny, inventive, and a genuinely affectionate take on Norse legend. 18th place, Beowulf, 2007. 18th place goes to Robert Zemeckis' motion capture epic Beowulf, released in 2007. Based on the Old English poem that dates back well over 1,000 years, the film follows the legendary warrior Beowulf, voiced and motions captured by Ray Winstone, as he travels to Denmark to rid the kingdom of a monstrous creature named Grendel and confronts the dark consequences that follow. Zemeckis uses his pioneering performance capture technology to create a visually stunning, hyper-stylized world that exists somewhere between photorealism and myth. The result is a film that feels genuinely larger than life in a way that matches its ancient source material. Ray Winstone, Anthony Hopkins, John Malkovich, and Angelina Jolie bring remarkable weight to their performances even through the digital medium. And while some critics at the time found the animation uncanny, the film has aged into something genuinely impressive. It captures the grandeur and the darkness of the original poem with a scale that few live-action productions could match. For sheer ambition and visual spectacle, Beowulf earns its spot. 17th place, The Long Ships, 1964. Coming in at 17th place is a rousing old-school adventure that many younger viewers might not even know exists. The Long Ships, directed by Jack Cardiff and released in 1964, stars Richard Widmark as Rolf, a Norse adventurer who becomes obsessed with finding a legendary golden bell, said to contain enough treasure to fund a kingdom. Standing in his way is a Moorish prince played with magnetic intensity by Sidney Poitier, and the two men spend most of the film in a gloriously entertaining battle of wills, wits, and swords. Now, this is not a film that is particularly concerned with historical accuracy. The Long Ships is pure Saturday afternoon adventure cinema. Big performances, sweeping action, and a story that moves like a long ship with the wind behind it. But what it lacks in scholarly rigor, it more than makes up for in sheer entertainment value. Sidney Poitier in this role is an absolute revelation, and Richard Widmark is exactly the kind of roguish, larger-than-life hero that films like this were built for, a genuinely underrated gem. 16th place, Pathfinder, 2007. 16th place belongs to Marcus Nispel's Pathfinder, released in 2007. The film is actually a remake of a Norwegian film from 1987, and it tells the story of a young Norse boy who is left behind in North America after his Viking raiding party is killed. Raised by a Native American tribe, he grows into a fierce warrior played by Karl Urban, and when the Vikings return years later to continue their brutal conquest, he becomes his adopted people's last line of defense. The film is visually ferocious, shot with a dark, desaturated palette that makes the snow-covered landscapes feel genuinely hostile and dangerous. Karl Urban brings tremendous physicality to the role, and the action sequences are inventive and brutal in equal measure. What elevates Pathfinder above being just another action film is its thematic richness. It is a story about identity, belonging, and the choice between the culture you came from and the one that made you who you are. It also happens to feature some of the most intense Viking warfare ever put on screen. 15th place, Hammer of the Gods, 2013. At 15th place, we have Hammer of the Gods, directed by Farron Blackburn and released in 2013. Set in 900 AD, the film follows a young Viking prince named Steinar, played by Charlie Bewley, who is sent on a brutal quest across uncharted territories to find his exiled brother and bring him back to lead their people. What begins as a fairly straightforward adventure film gradually descends into something much darker, a grim, merciless examination of violence, loyalty, and what men become when civilization falls away entirely. The film wears its influences proudly. There is clear DNA from Apocalypse Now in its structure and its themes, and the script is unafraid to put its protagonists through genuinely harrowing experiences. The production values are solid, the performances are committed, and the fight choreography has a raw, unglamorous quality that feels authentic to the period. Hammer of the Gods is not a perfect film, but it is a genuinely serious and often impressive attempt to explore the Viking world without romanticizing it. 14th place, Prince Valiant, 1954. 14th place goes to Henry Hathaway's Prince Valiant, released in 1954 and based on the beloved comic strip by Hal Foster that had been captivating readers since 1937. Robert Wagner plays the young Prince Valiant, the son of a deposed Viking king, who journeys to King Arthur's Camelot, seeking the knighthood that might one day allow him to reclaim his father's throne. What follows is a wonderfully colorful and unabashedly romantic adventure that blends Norse mythology with Arthurian legend in ways that should not work nearly as well as they do. Sterling Hayden plays the villainous Sir Brack, with scenery-chewing relish, and Janet Leigh is luminous as Princess Aleida. Now, I will fully acknowledge that this film is not exactly a gritty historical document. Robert Wagner's haircut alone is doing things that no Viking ever did in recorded history. But Prince Valiant is a lavishly mounted, genuinely exciting adventure film that captures something timeless about the Norse spirit of exploration, courage, and the drive to reclaim what is rightfully yours. A classic that deserves far more attention. 13th place, The Vikings, 1958. 13th place belongs to Richard Fleischer's The Vikings, released in 1958, and still one of the most purely entertaining Viking films ever made. Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis star as Einar and Erik, two Viking half-brothers who spend most of the film trying to kill each other before circumstances force a grudging alliance. Ernest Borgnine, Janet Leigh, and a genuinely spectacular cast round out this epic adventure that was filmed on location in Norway, Brittany, and Croatia, and shot in breathtaking widescreen by cinematographer Jack Cardiff, who also directed The Long Ships 6 years later. Small World. The film opens with a woodcut animation narrated by Orson Welles, which alone tells you that everyone involved was swinging for the fences. The battle sequences, particularly the assault on a fortified English castle, are thrilling even by modern standards. Kirk Douglas is absolutely electric, throwing himself into the role with a physical abandon that must have genuinely terrified his co-stars. The Vikings is grand, rousing, old-fashioned Hollywood epic filmmaking at its very finest, and it remains a benchmark for the genre. 12th place, Severed Ways, The Norse Discovery of America, 2007. At 12th place, we have one of the most unusual entries on this list, Severed Ways. The Norse Discovery of America, written and directed by Tony Stone and released in 2007, follows two Norse warriors stranded in North America around 1000 AD after their expedition goes catastrophically wrong. Abandoned and alone in the wilderness, they must survive, using nothing but their skills, their instincts, and their rapidly fraying sanity. This is not a film for everyone, and I say that with great affection for it. Severed Ways is a slow, meditative, almost wordless survival film that plays more like a documentary than a traditional narrative feature. It was shot on a shoestring budget in Vermont, using natural light and non-professional actors, and its rough, unpolished texture gives it an authenticity that more expensive productions rarely achieve. The soundtrack, which features black metal and doom metal in place of a traditional score, is either a stroke of genius or completely maddening, depending on your sensibilities. Probably both. It is strange, challenging, and genuinely unlike anything else on this list. 11th place, Arn, the Knight Templar, 2007. 11th place goes to Peter Flinth's Arn, the Knight Templar, released in 2007 and based on Jan Guillau's celebrated trilogy of Swedish historical novels. While the film is primarily set during the Crusades, its roots and its heart are unmistakably Norse. Joachim Nederqvist plays Arn Magnusson, a Swedish nobleman raised in a monastery who becomes a formidable knight and is sent to the Holy Land as penance for a forbidden love affair. The film is essentially Sweden's answer to Braveheart, a sweeping, expensive, emotionally charged historical epic that was a massive cultural event in Scandinavia upon its release. The battle sequences are spectacularly mounted, the production design is meticulous, and Nederqvist brings a quiet dignity and tremendous physicality to the title role. Arn's journey from Viking-descended nobleman to crusading warrior is genuinely compelling, and the film never loses sight of its protagonist's humanity, even in its most action-heavy moments. For anyone who has not explored Scandinavian historical cinema, Arn is an absolutely essential starting point. 10th place, How to Train Your Dragon, 2010. At 10th place, I can already hear some of you typing in the comments. And yes, I stand by this completely. How to Train Your Dragon, directed by Dean DeBlois and Chris Sanders and released in 2010, is not just one of the greatest animated films ever made. It is one of the greatest Viking films ever made. Full stop. Set in the Norse-inspired archipelago of Berk, the film follows the wonderfully named Hiccup, the scrawny, inventive son of a Viking chief who befriends a wounded dragon instead of killing it, and in doing so, changes the course of his entire civilization. The film is a masterclass in character development, world building, and emotional storytelling. Its themes of courage, nonconformity, and the relationship between fathers and sons land with the weight of a warhammer every single time. And the flying sequences, set to John Powell's extraordinary score, are among the most purely joyful moments in cinema history. Do not let the animation fool you. This film has more genuine Viking spirit than half the live-action entries on this list. 9th place, The Northman, 2022. 9th place belongs to Robert Eggers' The Northman, released in 2022, and without question, the most historically rigorous Viking film ever made. Alexander Skarsgård plays Amleth, a Norse prince consumed by a vow of vengeance against his uncle Fjolnir, who murdered his father and enslaved his mother. If that story sounds familiar, it should. The Northman draws from the same ancient Scandinavian legend that inspired Shakespeare's Hamlet, and Eggers treats that source material with a ferocity and an authenticity that is almost overwhelming. Every detail of this film, from the shamanistic rituals and the period-accurate weapons, to the Old Norse linguistic patterns and the cosmological worldview, was painstakingly researched and faithfully rendered. Eggers collaborated with historians, archaeologists, and Norse scholars to ensure that the world he created was as close to genuine Viking Age experience as cinema has ever achieved. Skarsgård is absolutely terrifying in the lead role, and the supporting cast, including Nicole Kidman, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Willem Dafoe is exceptional. The Northman is brutal, beautiful, and unforgettable. On 8th place, Valhalla Rising, 2009. 8th place goes to Nicholas Winding Refn's Valhalla Rising, released in 2009. And if The Northman is the most historically authentic Viking film on this list, then Valhalla Rising is undoubtedly the most spiritually and artistically ambitious. Mads Mikkelsen plays One Eye, a mute Norse warrior of almost supernatural ferocity who escapes captivity and joins a group of Christian crusaders on a voyage that takes increasingly strange and terrifying turns. This is not a film that is interested in plot in any conventional sense. Valhalla Rising is a meditation on violence, mythology, and the collision between pagan Norse spirituality and the rising tide of Christianity, told through long, hypnotic sequences of extraordinary visual poetry. Refn shoots the Scottish Highlands as though they are another world entirely, and Mads Mikkelsen communicates volumes without uttering a single word. It is slow, strange, and deeply uncomfortable in all the right ways. I will warn you right now, if you sit down expecting a conventional action film, you will be completely lost. But if you let the film work on you, it is an experience unlike anything else in this genre. 7th place, Beowulf and Grendel, 2005. 7th place goes to Sturla Gunnarsson's Beowulf and Grendel, released in 2005, which tackles the same ancient poem as Zemeckis' animated version, but approaches it from an entirely different angle. Gerard Butler plays Beowulf, the legendary Geat warrior who arrives in Denmark to help King Hrothgar, played by Stellan Skarsgård, defeat the monstrous Grendel, who has been terrorizing his meat hall. But in Gunnarsson's version, Grendel himself is given a tragic backstory and a genuine humanity that transforms the familiar story into something far more morally complex and emotionally resonant. Shot entirely on location in Iceland, the film has a raw, elemental beauty that perfectly captures the ancient world it is depicting. The landscapes are stunning, the performances are grounded and earthy, and the script, by Andrew Rye Burzins, is genuinely intelligent in the way it reframes the hero versus monster narrative into a story about cycles of violence, vengeance, and misunderstanding. Gerard Butler brings real authority to Beowulf, and the Icelandic setting gives the entire production an authenticity that money alone cannot buy. 6th place, Ironclad, 2011. 6th place goes to Jonathan English's Ironclad, released in 2011. Now, while this film is primarily about the defense of Rochester Castle during the baronial rebellion against King John in 1215, its central warrior is a Knight Templar, played by James Purefoy, and the forces arrayed against him include a significant contingent of Viking-descended Danish mercenaries, making it both a Viking-adjacent film and one of the most viscerally brutal medieval war films ever made. Paul Giamatti is absolutely unhinged as King John, chewing scenery with a gleeful ferocity that is a genuine highlight of the film, and the battle sequences are shockingly brutal, featuring some of the most graphic medieval combat ever depicted in a mainstream production. What Ironclad does extraordinarily well is convey the absolute chaos, fear, and physical devastation of medieval warfare in a way that feels grimly authentic. It is not glamorous, it is not heroic in any comfortable sense. It is dirty and desperate and visceral, and that unflinching honesty is what earns it a place on this list. 5th place, Alfred the Great, 1969. 5th place belongs to Clive Donner's Alfred the Great, released in 1969 and starring David Hemmings as the young English king who spent most of his reign battling Viking invasions from the Danes. Now, here is a film that takes a genuinely fascinating perspective on the Viking world by telling the story from the other side of the shield wall. Alfred is portrayed not as a triumphant warrior king, but as a conflicted intellectual young man, thrust into a role he neither wanted nor anticipated. Forced to confront an enemy he cannot help but admire, Michael York plays the Danish Viking leader Guthrum with tremendous charisma and complexity, and the relationship between Alfred and Guthrum is the beating heart of the film. The battle sequences are impressively staged for their era, and Donner shoots the English countryside with a stark, autumnal beauty that makes it feel worth fighting for. Alfred the Great is a thoughtful, underappreciated film that takes the Viking threat seriously while also humanizing the men who carried it, and it deserves to be far better known than it currently is. Fourth place, The 13th Warrior, 1999. Fourth place goes to John McTiernan's The 13th Warrior, released in 1999, and based on Michael Crichton's novel Eaters of the Dead, which was itself inspired by the real historical account of the Arab traveler Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who encountered a band of Norse warriors while traveling through Russia in the 10th century. Antonio Banderas plays Ibn Fadlan, an Arab courtier who is essentially drafted into joining a group of Viking warriors on a mission to defeat a monstrous enemy threatening a Norse kingdom to the north. What follows is one of the most entertaining and genuinely underrated adventure films of the 1990s. The 13th Warrior works because it approaches the Viking world through the eyes of an outsider, and in doing so, it makes that world feel genuinely exotic, dangerous, and fascinating. The battle sequences are thrilling, the camaraderie between the warriors is convincingly developed, and the film has a genuine reverence for the culture it is depicting. Vladimir Kulich as Buliweef is one of the great unsung Viking heroes in cinema history. This film flopped on release and has been criminally underappreciated ever since. Third place, Viking, 2016. Third place goes to Andrei Kravchuk's Viking, released in 2016, a Russian historical epic that tells the story of Vladimir the Great, the 10th century Norse-descended ruler of Kievan Rus, who would go on to baptize Russia into Christianity. Now, this film was a massive cultural event in Russia upon its release, becoming one of the highest-grossing Russian films in history at the time. And it is not hard to understand why. Viking is an extraordinarily ambitious production, sweeping in scope, ferocious in its action sequences, and genuinely committed to depicting the Norse world of early medieval Eastern Europe with historical seriousness. Danila Kozlovsky plays Vladimir with a raw, magnetic intensity, and the film traces his brutal rise from illegitimate prince to the ruler of one of the most powerful states in the medieval world. The battle sequences are genuinely spectacular, staged on a scale that rivals anything Hollywood was producing at the same time. Western audiences largely missed this one, and that is a genuine shame, because Viking is a remarkable film that offers a perspective on the Norse world that almost no other production has ever explored. A second place, Northman, A Viking Saga, 2014. Second place goes to Claudio Fay's Northman, A Viking Saga, released in 2014 and starring Tom Hopper as Osbjörn, a Viking warrior whose longship is wrecked off the coast of Scotland. Stranded with his crew in hostile territory and pursued by a merciless band of mercenary hunters hired by the local king, the Vikings must fight their way across the Scottish Highlands to reach safety. What Northman delivers is essentially a Viking chase film, lean, propulsive, and relentlessly entertaining, with outstanding location photography in the actual Scottish and South African landscapes that gives the entire production a visual grandeur that belies its modest budget. Tom Hopper, who most audiences know from Game of Thrones and The Umbrella Academy, is magnetic in the lead role, bringing a physicality and a charisma to Osbjörn that makes him an instantly compelling screen presence. The action sequences are inventive and brutal, the supporting cast is solid throughout, and the film never outstays its welcome. Northman is everything a Viking action film should be: fast, fierce, and utterly relentless. It is one of the most purely enjoyable films on this entire list. First place, The Northman, 2022. And in first place, the greatest Viking film ever made is Robert Eggers' The Northman. Yes, I know we already talked about it at number 9. And yes, I'm fully aware that I have reshuffled this list in my head approximately 4 times while recording this script, because choosing between The Northman and the films above it is genuinely agonizing. But the truth is that The Northman represents something no other Viking film has ever achieved. It is simultaneously the most authentic, the most visually spectacular, the most emotionally devastating, and the most artistically serious Viking film in the history of cinema. Eggers spent years researching the Norse world before a single frame was shot, collaborating with scholars of Old Norse religion, Viking Age material culture, and Scandinavian linguistics to build a world that feels genuinely real rather than mythologized. Alexander Skarsgård reportedly trained for months to achieve the physical transformation required for the role, and the result is a performance of terrifying conviction. The film's vision of the Viking world is violent and spiritual and deeply strange, shaped by a cosmology that is genuinely alien to modern sensibilities, and Eggers never condescends to his audience by softening or explaining it. He simply drops you into this world and trusts you to find your footing. The Northman is a masterpiece of historical filmmaking, of mythological storytelling, and of pure visceral cinema. It is the gold standard for this genre, and it is not particularly close. And there you have it, the top 20 best Viking movies of all time. From the space invader chaos of Outlander to the ferocious historical purity of the Northmen, this genre has produced some of cinema's most thrilling, most beautiful, and most genuinely ambitious films. And honestly, after spending this much time in the Viking world, I am half tempted to cancel my weekend plans, grow a beard, and learn Old Norse. Half tempted. If you enjoyed this countdown, give the video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more film lovers discover top movies, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss another ranking. We want to hear from you too. What is your all-time favorite Viking film? Did your pick make the list? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.